Welcome everyone to another Whaleshares Hangout. Today is October 30th, 2018, and we join each week in the official Whaleshares Discord to discuss all things Whaleshares related, anything from our current updates to community questions and answers. We're joined each week with several witnesses as well as members from the dev and launch team that are here to answer those questions that anyone has. And as always, we'll start with our updates. We're hoping this week as well, Official Fuzzy will join us. He's just a little bit late at the moment, but hopefully he'll chime in a little bit later. So this week for updates, we only had one that happened in the time period since the last show, and that is that the second share drop claim period has ended. And at this time, just as we did the first time around, we're doing the process of refunding any tokens or anything with invalid claims, invalid memos, or things that might have went wrong in that process. There's nothing that needs to be done for anyone that was claiming during this period. That whole process is automatic. If you missed the first two claim periods, pretty much talking to anyone, I guess, who's not joining us today in the Hangout, but anyone who's listening later, just keep your eye out for any other announcements for future claim windows if we offer those. You'll find that on the official Whaleshares account at Whaleshares, at whaleshares.io. At the same time, there was a new account approval process that was activated at the same time, I guess about 5 days ago. And this does two purposes. It helped to expedite the new account approval process and also begin the process of handing parts of the Whaleshares platform over to the community, as we've always promised. So this new system that was launched moves the responsibility for account approvals away from the Whaleshares dev team and gives it over to the witness group. And this includes the top 20 witnesses who have the authority to approve in or reject new accounts. It requires 2 witnesses from the top 20 to approve or 2 to reject as well. At this time, the majority of the accounts are being approved in unless we find any kind of obvious duplications while verifying accounts, emails, things like that. This is just one more reason that we say every week. It's very important for you to vote for witnesses on the platform, people you know and trust in the community who are doing good things, actively participating, and interested in the long-term growth and stability of the platform. Like I said now, because the Whaleshares witnesses are now handling the approval process of new accounts into the platform. Those are our main updates for this week. And I'll turn it over to Krista to see if she has anything on her community side that she wants to talk about.
The only thing that I really wanted to touch base on majorly is we have been having people ask like crazy about whale tokens. We are trying to come up with some sort of solution, trying to decide what makes something a whale token. Bushkill, you're popping in on me, buddy. We're trying to decide what qualifies something as a whale token. We are actually saying that they are in beta right now. Because we don't want to offer up the services of the guy who makes them work, without you having to manually go in and vote, and makes them work automatically. So there's an official list of tokens that can be found at whaleshares.info. It can also be found if you ask Whalebot what whale tokens are. And other than that, any other tokens that are saying that they are whale tokens are not official. Therefore, we can't help you if something goes wrong with them. I know that there are a couple of them that are already being used in the same way whale tokens are being used. I cannot stop anybody, nor can anybody else from using their stake the way they want to, but I would just urge you to be cautious when purchasing any that aren't, recognized as the community as official whale tokens is all.
Yeah, that's something that's very important because we do mention every week that there's a group of team members who's working on what's called the Whale Book, which will be the future version of what you see on whaleshares.info, which will have all the information about the tokens, the platforms, the help and things like that. But it'll also be the central resource when it comes to the whale tokens. And like Krista mentioned, we are basically, because remember the website's now, the platform of the website's only about 45 days, 60 days old if you're going back to the pre-launch time. So, we're very young, very early, and the whale token concept, which has been basically ported over from what official Fuzzy had done over on steemit with his Whaleshare and BeyondBit tokens, um, that was kind of proof of concept over there. It was two tokens running on a platform that was already established, already had its own value. It's sorry, the token itself, the Steem and SBD, already had its own values established, and things were kind of stable when the tokens were running. So over here on Whaleshares, we do have 14 initial whale tokens that were set up, mostly from the dev team and creators of the platform themselves, people who were already community leaders at the time we launched. So those tokens are running as the experimental tokens over on Whaleshares. As we move along and we open up, we bring back the program which is called the Whale Tank that we used to run over on steemit. It was in coordination with steemit. The Whale Tank will be brought back. This is where community projects and initiatives and stuff can be supported by people with larger whale stake on the platform. Awesome. Hey, well, Fuzzy, I see you here. So this concept is now being ported over here. So these first tokens that are already in the queue, they're already set up and functioning, will be what are used to test all the interactions with these, I guess you call them privileges or services that we're going to offer on Whaleshares, the platform, including Whale Tank. So these tokens will kind of be the proof of concept, making sure everything gets hammered out. Because in time we might have a worker proposal system or a community proposal system that goes in hand with this. And what we have now needs to be tested and make sure everything gets ironed out before we end up with, like, say, 100 whale tokens in the mix and things aren't going the way they're supposed to. So that's kind of goes along with that answer that Chris was saying, that we're kind of in this beta period, and so we're not really opening up the automatic whale token reward system that we have in place now for the tokens to any other tokens. People who obviously have the coding knowledge can do it themselves or do manual systems like Krista was mentioning. But just be careful. We will have the official whale tokens and then a subclass of, say, community tokens, but that everything that is requirements are for them are still being worked out. So we really don't want to jump the gun or rush any of that stuff. We want to make sure it gets done right from the beginning. And we see Fuzzy's here with us. Fuzz, if you are ready to jump on the mic, we are here for you.
Yeah, I'm here. I've just been listening to you. I think that you've said it pretty well. One of the things that I think we know is pretty obvious in crypto is that there's a lot of people out there who like to abuse things. And there's also a lot of things that, like, even well-intentioned people, we have a lot of things that we're not quite sure about yet, right? And let's face it, we never got the chance to really test this on a large scale on its own chain. I think that there will be other factors that come into play now that we have Whaleshares in existence, the actual chain, that didn't exactly, we didn't have the proper test bed for Steem. But now that we have this, the experiment kind of starts. And we wanted to keep it kind of small at first, right? And then we can expand as we move forward. But I can't really disagree with anything that you said, PowerPics. I think you covered it pretty clearly to give you my thoughts on it.
All right, awesome. Yeah, because we do have a lot of, almost every day, people asking about that, or how they can set their own tokens up, and we're just kind of tell everyone just a little bit of patience. Let's get to these these early months and make sure we have everything up and running and give us a chance to test things so things don't go wrong. We want to make sure things work as we roll them out.
Yep. Well, I do want to thank you as well, and I also want to thank everybody for joining up. And I do want to say, if you guys have any questions for me, I'm here to answer anything that that you might have to ask PowerPics. That goes for you, obviously, too. If you have anything that you think you should bring up, I'll gladly answer what I can.
Yeah, definitely.
But thank you guys for having me.
Really quick before we move on to questions, I would just like for you to go ahead and kind of explain maybe briefly your vision to people when you came up with the idea. I think that is what people are wanting to hear from you most. So we will leave time for questions, but whatever you find relevant to kind of talk to people about, PowerPics records this, so it'll be forever on the interweb.
Okay, so I'll start off by saying this. In the beginning days of Steem, there was this cultural meme hashtag type thing that came up called reward pool rape. And I always found it kind of ridiculous, the whole concept of reward pool rape, in terms of if you own
Did we lose Fuzzy?
oh, sorry. Where did I leave off? I don't know how that happened, but I literally just.
You got about 3 words in, then you cut off.
Okay, so we got into the whole concept and culture of reward pool rape and the whole concept of circle jerks. And I hate to use those terms that way, but that's what they call it. Okay. And reward pool rape is somebody who's part of the network who got a bunch of tokens, using those tokens to directly enrich themselves at the expense of others, or perceived expense of others, right? And then we also had the whole concept of the other one, the circle jerk, which is people rewarding one another, right? Especially the ones who are like buddies, all rewarding one another, right? And we have this culture right now where we literally have laws that are being passed that are making the internet not free anymore. Like, quite literally not free anymore. Like, you don't have free speech. And we can see that with Gab, what they're trying to do to Gab.io, right? So one of the things that came to me whenever I was on Steem and being censored by Ned was, I'm doing something really valuable. I think I'm sacrificing a lot for something I believe in. I offered it to help and was attacked for it. And I'm not saying that to woe is me. I'm just saying that's my experience. So that is a real experience that I had. Now, Steem is slightly different than Whaleshares. Steem was mined into existence, and because of its mining being the preferred distribution method, it's very sided in ownership. So one of the issues that we have in Steem that contribute to this entire reward pool rape culture was that somebody started out initially with the vast majority of the tokens, and a willingness to potentially downvote other people and censor them and harm them. But my take on it has always been, we should empower ourselves and empower our communities. And we should, rather than focus on censoring on a protocol level or a blockchain level, we should block the people we don't like being part of the network and getting their words and their things that might offend me or whatever they're doing. I don't want to see it. I just don't want it to trend for me, right? But I want transparency as well, because we don't have that on Steem. And I think those things have kind of contributed to this issue, right? So my take on this has been, rather than censoring things, why don't we change how it works? Why don't we make it so when somebody rewards something, it's worth a share automatically? And not only that, we'll take away the reputation, because when you have the reputation tied to somebody upvoting you with a bunch of stake, then really that reputation score is really only telling people how many whales you know, right? And it doesn't really make other people seem equal or feel equal in the environment. So what I personally advocate for Whaleshares, and I don't have stake enough to make decisions on my own on it. Okay, so this is up to the community. But my take on it is we should have people essentially forming into groups around certain tokens. People can create a token and build a group, and they can all join it. They can connect their social media accounts to Whaleshares. And whenever a token is sent to the specified location, the entire community who is signed on to that token will share it and echo it across outside of Whaleshares itself, right? Which could be Steam, it could be Twitter, it could be any number of other platforms that are popping up. But essentially connect up and organically form a tribe that kind of does a thunderclap on all kinds of social media networks. And the reason why I thought that was important was a couple of things. One, what is a social media network? If we call a circle of friends a circle jerk as though that's a bad thing that you have with your own stake, then that's not very uniting lighting on it, right? It makes it look a little bit what it really is. Because if you look at Facebook, if you look at any of these social networks that really grew, how did they grow? But by people sharing one another's stuff. And that could be a post about, I ate this for supper, or a post saying, oh, I'm having a very sad day. And you have a bunch of people who love you, upvote you. You know, these things are not reward pool rape. It is stake that you got on your own, fairly and square. And I believe that a lot of the problems that we saw came from that really, really insane distribution difference. I mean, like really hardcore insane distribution, right? Steemit Inc. has started out with well over 70% of all the stake in the network. Am I? Am I for everybody else as well?
It seems better now, but you were for a minute there. Not to the point where I couldn't get what you were saying. So let's see how it goes.
I don't know why my internet's so horrible. I'm literally right next to my router.
It might be a Discord issue because I was having issues before we started. So
That's unfortunate. But what did you guys not hear? Did you guys hear me fine? Oh, Udis, you did hear me?
I think that you were fine, and in some parts you were kind of breaking up, but I think that I could understand the gist of what you were saying anyways.
Okay, so I'm not cutting out to some people. Is that the case?
I don't know. Eroded Thought said heard enough to understand what you meant.
Okay, well, the goal is, and I'll keep it as short and sweet as possible. Social media is a circle jerk. It's when people go out and they care about one another and they follow each other and they reward one another within their own voluntary social network. They reward one another fairly. And if Whaleshares was share dropped and there wasn't an ICO or the ability to mine 70% of it into existence at the early stages, and if it has such high inflation that anybody who joins early on can get a solid stake if they're active, then it's a heck of a lot better starting point for a real social network. And what that means is if we don't lose track of what a social network really is, which is rewarding one another for participating in our social network, and we don't make it into something where it's all about content being good, quote unquote good, then we make it into something far larger than a blogging platform. Make it into a sharing platform. And we make it into a place where people reward one another, but also rather than focusing just on internally, because the main circle jerk is really, I don't want to say Steam itself, but let's face it. How many times do you see them really going outside onto other social networks to get community to join? I suspect they will now that I'm talking about it. But yeah, exactly. That's my point, eroded thoughts. So we have on this platform the ability to have it where everybody who follows us can share us across all of social media for a price, that of your token, a token earned from and backed by a community that trusts you, your community, your circle jerk. Even if they are, that's fine, because they're already having to fight. They're going to have to fight their own terminology, right? So the point that I'm bringing up here is, if we create a sharing network where people don't feel like they have to be attacked because they want to post, oh, I'm having a really good day today, and then leaving it at that. If they don't have to worry about, well, am I going to get attacked because somebody decided to use their stake and reward me, right? Those are the problems. At IntelliGuy, what about self-rewarding yourself using any tactic possible? Would that be considered an abuse of the social platform? The question I have is, did the person buy the tokens? And if they did, is it transparent and easily found what they're doing with it? And if so, there are certain people on Steam, for instance, who will probably not have many wonderful opportunities in cryptocurrency because they've done things on a blockchain openly in public that will make them look very bad to most people. And I would suspect that reputation lost is far worse. And is probably a good enough reason to not worry about that. My take on it is, if we have communities that can build up and can reward one another, and if Bobby Circle Jerk, who literally just posts to himself from bot accounts and upvotes himself, well, if that's what he's doing, then as long as he's not cluttering up my feed or your feed or making the platform unusable by other people, it's still worlds better than what it already is, right? If you look at other different platforms, right, it's worlds better. And what I will ask is it better to censor people? Has there ever been a time in history, ever, when censorship was the proper answer? And I don't know that I can ever name one, because enabling conversation is what brings us closer together and what teaches us. And the moment that we start shutting off other options for speech or people talking about things or doing things is the moment that we start opening up a well of, that's pretty bottomless. Now, I'm not going to say that there won't be people who will do those things in IntelliGuy. I simply think that, personally, and this is my personal take on it, obviously I'm not going to be able to unilaterally change anything, but my take on it is that we don't worry about that. We worry about, if you don't like what somebody's doing, censor them in IntelliGuy and censor them for yourself, right? And that's, I think, what I think is the best way of doing it, because we oftentimes think that some central authority is better to figure out what we will like and what we won't like, or what we should see and shouldn't see. But that rarely is the case. I don't know if it ever has been. I can't think of a single time that it has.
Hey, IntelliGuy had another question for you. It's quite a bit up. He wanted to know. I could have just let him get on the mic and did it, I guess.
Yeah, I'm here. No, it was basically that question. I'm asking on behalf of everyone else because on a new platform, even though we have a lot of people coming over from Steam and stuff, they're trying to see what this platform, how it's different, what it's aimed for, what the end goal is. And when they see some of the similar behavior here, like I know that in one of the original pre-launch posts, PowerPics said that voting collusion, voting rings, and all of that is the reason why delegation was removed because we don't want a pile of bid bots here. The idea is that this is a shared resource, WLS. It's a shared resource of the reward pool. It's a shared website. It's a shared community. And yes, I agree with the if I don't like somebody, I don't have to sit there and constantly go look for their problems. I can just avoid them. But the problem is that people are confused on what the good example is and what the bad example is. And their attitude is, well, if it's free to use your stake and to do what you want, then if, for instance, I'm going to bring his name up because we all know it, it's Hagen. If Hagen's going to milk the reward pool because he has so much money to do so and abuse whale tokens for what they were designed to give a leg up to people that deserve them, earn them, just want the odd good, really good post to get noticed, something. If that's completely acceptable on the platform, then I'm going to do it too. Now I know that there's other things coming forward where censorship and stuff like that may be possible on a per user basis, and that's fine. But during this talks on while you're available, Fuzzy, I would just like for you to uh, mention, how people should interpret. Should they just follow the bad examples? What is a good example? That sort of thing.
Well, I'm not here to tell you a good or bad example. Other than to say, if you look at what we've done, I think it's a pretty decent example of what you can do with it. To the other point that you said, if you're going to do it too, it'll ruin your reputation. I invite you to go and try, but you've worked pretty hard for that reputation, right? Do you think that Hagen's reputation is going to grow as something that people love or someone that people want to look up to? Or do you think that eventually you're going to see that a lot of people realize who he is and that blockchain and the honesty of the blockchain is kind of enabled something never before possible, which is the ability for a community to really know who somebody in power is or somebody who has power is, right? I think that that's the biggest thing. And anybody who doesn't realize that, then I think that they're going to, over time, they're going to find out the same types of things that people like Bernie Sanders have found out. People don't like you. You don't get as many opportunities, right? That's my take on it. And of course, we're going to be fighting this or debating this our entire lives, just like the many generations before us. But I will continue to say, and I don't think I don't think I'll ever say otherwise. Censorship doesn't make sense to me. Simply doesn't.
I actually asked Hagen a couple days ago if he could be more in depth with his posts, like let us know which ones he's investing in and why. Not because I want his financial advice, but because I would like to diversify. So I thought maybe appealing to him on that level might work, and he just ignored my comment.
Oh, of course. Well, let me ask you a question, guys. How much time do we spend thinking about that when we could be spending time thinking about the other things? Right? How many things do we talk about, for instance, in politics that really are so far away from the actual core of the matter because we're talking about ancillary things that are actually about should we have a right? Instead of talking about should we have the right to free speech, I would rather say, let's talk about how can we do X, how can we do Y, how can we do Z, instead of just focusing on what a couple people are doing. Because let's face it, those couple people, if they have 70% of a blockchain, yes, it is a problem, but it causes a big cultural rift, right? I was saying if you guys start out with 70% of the chain, then it does cause a problem. But if you guys have if it's a pretty well distributed chain and it has this high inflation in the early days, so those of you who are participating, okay, I'll join. Thank you. Really unfortunate. I love my internet. You guys hear me okay now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so my take on it is when we have censorship, I don't think there will ever be a reason for censorship. I think that we should, rather than that, focus on how to bring value. The only thing that I would say, going back to what IntelliGuy was saying, is if somebody creates a bunch of sock puppets and pretends to be somebody else, right? But even with those things, there will be tools relatively soon for us to be able to make it so you have to verify your account as a unique human being. There are things that we can do to curb the ability for people to easily abuse the system. But we don't have to do things that they can't control it, right? We don't have to, well, exactly. I know that's where you're talking, Bushkill. But here's the thing, like I said, we have tools that are on their way that are supposed to be coming, and I suspect they will be. And it's not just for Whaleshares, it's within us and other places and depots that we can always grab from these places, though, right? And that enables you to make sure somebody is indeed a unique human being, a unique person. So my point on it is, as long as there's transparency and those who are in power got there by earning their tokens fair and square, then I think that we should kind of focus less on what other people are doing and more on how we can help and more on how we can build value. Because otherwise we're kind of focusing on, it's kind of like rather than me focusing on building something in my own life, they say, be the change that you want to see in the world. If I'm not being the change and instead I'm so focused on X, Y, and Z in politics, then I'm probably distracted from actually changing the world, right? Now, I'm not saying that that's what we're doing here. I think these are fair discussions, but I think that we also have to be careful not to go so far into this stuff that we say, hey, the proper response is censorship. The proper response is to harm another person. I think if we build the user interface to be something where we reward one another, share among our own voluntary associations, and we can that if we have a bunch of people who want to share our stuff on social media, we can echo that out and reward them. I think it's a good place to be. And the coolest thing is, guys and girls, this is open source technology, right? So if a community becomes so beautiful and on their own within the Whaleshares ecosystem, and they ever say, oh, I want to split off and make a new chain. And by the way, wouldn't it be cool if they were like, by the way, you guys have been so awesome, we want to share drop a little bit on you? Like, wouldn't it be cool if we could create that kind of environment? And that's what I think that we can do. I do think that there will be people who scheme and scam, but there's going to always be those people. And I don't think it's ever a reason to sounds like the good crowds will outnumber the bad crowds as we move toward the Whaleshares future, which is exactly what we'd like to build together. I like that idea, but I'll also say that, even if that crowd is a minority, what happened to Whaleshares? You know what I mean? Kind of tells you what I think, in my opinion. If it ever becomes so bad, what did the founding fathers of my country say? If it ever becomes so bad and it takes away freedom, which is what these things are supposed to be for, then you need to tear it up and redo it. I think that's the ultimate goal, right? It has to be, because otherwise we're going to be living in a world where people subjectively say you are a terrorist or you're inciting hatred. And because of that, because of these valiant reasons, we're going to censor you.
Okay, so Whaleshares stickers are going to Steamfest, Fuzzy, so that's pretty neat. An effort. Yeah, if you see the picture in there, it's an effort between Bushkill and Deranged Visions, so that's pretty neat.
They look high quality, that's for sure. God, that's a good logo, ain't it?
It sure is. Anybody else have any questions?
The yin and yang is a pretty good, I think a pretty good logo to show, because it kind of explains a little bit of what I'm talking about in here. I think that yin and yang kind of automatically happens in life, right? There's a homeostasis that. Yeah, you can ask me, Chrono, but I have a feeling that you're digging into guilds and automation on certain things with guilds a little bit more than perhaps specifically we are. I don't know exactly if you have any of that stuff done or not, but if you, then you probably do. I mean, if you do, you, because we're more on the tokens themselves at this juncture.
Eroded Thoughts, you are free to use the logo as long as you're using it to promote Whaleshares or on Whaleshares. That's fine.
Yeah, no libel, guys. No lies. No putting things down for no reason. Those types of things. Yeah, I think it was kind of interesting whenever I saw that EOS had trademarked their new logo. It was just these are little things that I'm glad that those types of things aren't happening. Kind of like what steemit did. You know, they have the Steam logo and then they have the steemit logo, which is trademark. So you could get sued for using it if you don't have their permission, right? It's kind of, I don't know if it's right or wrong, but these are things that I think in these early stages should be very careful with things.
Yeah, we actually, I put a link to it, but we actually have a Whaleshares fan art in here. A room in here where you can add your fan art or, you know, use the fan art. I would recommend that you credit it, you know, credit who made it just to be on the safe side. And plus they deserve credit if they took the time out to make it for the community.
Man, it's really good. You know, one thing that I would say that people could do whenever they make their art is they could put it in there somewhere, their name, just in a little, you know, just sign it small somewhere stylistically. So when people do use your art, it's right there.
Yeah, I don't think that's a bad idea at all. I know that a lot of people do. I know Marshall makes Whaleshares songs and they always make me chuckle. I don't know that those are exactly free to use or not, but you can get them off YouTube and embed the link, right?
Yeah, we're a huge watermark. Yeah, t-shirt with a huge watermark with my name on it, or with Deranged Visions, at Deranged Visions on it. You gotta.
So if anybody else has any questions, feel free to type them, or you can jump on the mic. The mic should be unlocked as long as you have push to talk enabled.
I just got another question for Fuzzy, and this is for everybody that is curious. We noticed that you're not here a lot of Tuesdays, and people like hearing from you. Is there a reason for that? How often can people expect you to be here? And what's the status with
that? You well played, Intel guy. Let's say this: after a while in crypto, I've said that there will be certain days that I will not do certain things, like Hangouts. You will probably see me occasionally typing online because I am not 100% perfect with my promise, but I have said that I will not do Hangouts on Mondays and Tuesdays, or meetings on Mondays and Tuesdays, or that I will at least go as far out of my way as possible to ensure that it is minimized. To be fair with myself and you and my wife, I am not exactly the best at keeping that promise, but I have done a lot better than I thought I might. So that's kind of the quick answer to that. But obviously, you know, I love my family. I'm glad to be with my family. I do all the things that we do here, you know, that I do for my family and for what I perceive as a better future for them. So, you know, they understand that. But at the same time, like you guys said, one has to have a life. And Tuesdays is when this community is chosen. And, you know, to be honest with you, I feel like my job primarily has been done because one of the things, there are two things that I really set out for here. One, to keep a promise that was given a long time ago that I was part of I was talking about that promise behind the scenes a lot, which was the share drops on Bitshares. That happened well over the 10% promised. But another thing that I wanted to do was I wanted to reward a community that persisted through a lot of hard times, in a way that didn't make a token a security. And I never promised you guys a chain, if you guys recall. And the reason why I never did that was because of security laws and stuff like that. But what we did do is we handed you a token you could use to reward yourself in return for helping the community. And if you used it, great. If you held on to it, you got tokens share dropped on you, to be founders of this network. So and have, you know, nobody say no, because they're all afraid of me. I would have probably taken, you know, a large chunk of the chain up front and, you know, just cut it out and said it's mine. But that's not how I did it. And the reason why I didn't do it that way is because I had a community like you guys, and I don't believe in that stuff. But you guys, because I don't believe in that stuff, kind of formed up naturally around me and around my people like PowerPics and Crazy. Those are givers. And you guys are in this place where you have a chain that is not going to have a single boss, right? It's going to be its own thing, and it's going to exist for those reasons. But we did it for that reason, and to open it up. So I have ideas and I have thoughts, and I'll always tell you guys what I think. I'll gladly join up and answer questions and tell you guys my thoughts on it when I'm invited. But I also want to make it so the people who are leaders, who led and did things that made it possible that I couldn't have done on my own, people like Crazy and PowerPics and Teleguy, many more. Bush kills another one, to enable them to move forward and push this as well, and be the leaders that they are, and be recognized as the leaders they are, right? It's kind of a hard line to walk, because of course I don't want people thinking I've abandoned the idea of this or abandoned this. But at the same time, if let's say this, if Whaleshares becomes a sharing network where everything can echo out on different platforms, the connections I have and the projects I'm working with will very likely want to work with Whaleshares at some point, because where else would they get guilds thunderclapping everywhere? Exactly, guy.
Hey, Fuzzy, really quick. I have a guy that I put in timeout today, but he's listening, but he cannot type to you. And he has a question, so I figured I would pass it along. Talking about that hard line to walk, I put somebody in timeout today. I'm a big meanie. But anyways, he wanted me to ask you if you have concerns that too much power might be concentrated in too few hands, and if this might be a subject of abuse.
I think if you look at, here's what I'll say. When you look at Steem, it would take so much money to essentially to gain the amount of stake that Steemit has in Whaleshares, that you'd have to buy a lot of tokens, and you'd probably have to buy them at a very substantially increased price. So the likelihood of that happening is low, in my opinion. But I'll also say this: look at what happened despite the corruption on Steem. How many things really got in? How many things really increased on that? Right? Wait, what is it? 8% of the accounts have 91. Where do you say that? And first off, real quick, for people who say for iGMME, if you don't like that, tell people to claim it. And I'm not saying that's the case. I don't know if that number's correct, to be clear. So if you have proof of that number, I'd love to see it. But secondly, I'll also say, if people do not like that, everyone can claim their tokens. Now,
yeah, we have just to clarify some facts that I do know offhand. We have about 12 million unclaimed tokens, so that's almost half of the share drop. Only 6 accounts claimed during the second share drop period that we offered. So 12 million of that 8% is sitting, or that 91% is sitting in one account waiting to be claimed.
Yeah, and that, just to be clear, that account is not going to be, Hagen's not going to be using that account to upvote himself and stuff, right? That's going to, if anything, it'll be used for something that will help the community, like on larger level stuff like development or things like that. But the goal here is, and the key here is, if somebody's really concerned about the current distribution, there's 2 things. One, tell people to claim their tokens. Let people know on Bitshares and elsewhere. If you hold Bitshares on your own, in your own wallet, go claim them. And if you don't claim them, then you're also being diluted significantly by a bunch of people who did claim them and also are blogging and posting and sharing and creating Instagram kinds of photos and all kinds of other stuff, and just participating in general. Because the reasons why it halves the way that it does is because the people who get in early and start actively participating are going to gain substantially more from that in the early stages than they will later on. So the people who have not claimed their tokens are just being diluted even further by the ones who have. So I would say that if you do have concerns about it, one of the biggest things that you can do is let other people know, hey, if you don't like that, that there's a large number of stake in some hands, go grab the stake. But I'll tell you right now, I'm very, very, how do I say this? I'm very skeptical that 91% of the tokens are in 81% of the, or 8% of the accounts. Maybe I'm wrong. And if you prove me wrong, then I'll gladly look at it. But I would also say, if you prove me wrong, then I think it's just more of a reason for the Whaleshares community to realize that.
Again, Fuzzy, though, 50% of those probably are that account, that main account that does distributions when people get their share drop.
Yeah. I'm kind of, no, well, I'm cool for hearing data geek talk. I mean, data geeks are nice to have around. I'm just curious because I don't think that number's right. Because remember, that would be approximately how many million tokens that would be claimed only by a certain number of people, like a very, very not small number of people. No, well, Jamie, I'm kind of interested. I don't want to take offense to it. I don't mean to take offense. I don't take offense, to be honest with you. Like, these are the things that we need to know. If people do know the facts of the matter and can show me specific data on it, I'll look at it, and I will, if I'm wrong, I'll agree. I mean, why wouldn't I? Right? If you prove to me I'm wrong on something, then I have a chance to be right. Right? Like, if I care about being right really that much, then I probably should pay attention to it. But with that said, I'm very skeptical of that's the case. And even if that is the case, I don't see a lot of what I see happening, I don't think it's going to be something where you're going to have anyone with the amount of stake that the people in Steam do currently have, like a few of them. So, but with that said, I'll tell you what, if you can get me something, PM me with a document of some sort showing evidence of that, and I'll look at it. We'll see what we talk about from there. But I really don't think that that's the case. And furthermore, I will say, regardless of whether that is the case or not, again, I'll say I don't think it is. Let people claim their tokens, because they're just harming themselves if they're not. Because when this does happen and people are, remember, this isn't a blogging platform. This is a sharing network, and we're moving in the direction of sharing network. Then anybody who's on this chain and is participating in this sharing network, whenever it has that functionality, is going to have a very valuable tool in their hands and staking. And let's face it, it was done in a very fair way. I have a hard time with 91%. Just gonna say it.
I do too. But I mean, until I see the data kind of laid out, which I can't do right now, I can't really question it or refute it. I just know that personally, if it was including that account that had all the unclaimed sitting in it, it would be believable for me. If it's not including it, like I said, I'd have to go look at the numbers. Jamie's pretty good with numbers and pretty trustworthy, so I don't have any reason to assume that he's wrong. But in the same respect, like he's saying, there's 1,500 accounts that only have 0.01 whale stake in them. So all those new accounts haven't got a payout yet, because it takes 2 weeks to get your first payout, right? So it's 14 days. And we were pretty behind on account approvals until we launched the new sign up system, which is only, I think, about 10 days in now, maybe not even that. So I guess I could understand that. If a lot of people just haven't got their first payout yet, or they never use their account, right? We're just under 3,000 people on the platform last I knew. Maybe it's a little higher now. So I can kind of see where those go hand in hand. And as far as claiming goes, we are actually on a pause right now, as PowerPics mentioned in the beginning. The second claim period wrapped up. Only 6 people claimed during that. I'm not sure if we're going to have a third claim period or a fourth, or however many. That's something that needs to be discussed by the team still.
Yeah, what I'll tell you guys is I think that it should remain open personally. I think maybe not all the time, but there should be claim periods where people can continue doing it. And the only reason I say that is because there will be people at some point in time who FOMO, who are going to go, oh my God, I should have claimed. And if they don't claim, then they're going to get upset. If they can't claim, they're going to get upset. They're going to go on and start telling everybody how this is a big scam. And I think not in addition to that, let's face it, if I FOMO and let's say I had 100,000 whale stake in the very beginning, and that was the opportunity for me to make, 300,000 whale stake over the course of 3 or 4 years, due to inflation and all that stuff. Let's say that was the case, and I'm FOMOing now. I would like to get into it, and if I can get into it, I'm going to probably be a pretty active member, right? It's going to be pretty unlikely for me to accept that stake and then not be an active member. And even if I am not an active member, I'm still decentralizing ownership further.
Can I throw in a question?
Please don't ask me to permission.
How you doing, Fuzzy? It's Bug.
I mean,
My name is Bug, and I am a token junkie. So I've made quite a few tokens for myself. They're just unissued right now, maybe 15 or so, and planning to develop some down the road. And honestly, I'm not trying to stir a pot. If you tell me, listen, dude, we're working on this, don't worry about it. It just really, really concerned me when the Givens token cut its value in half. Because as someone who's trying to collect tokens, use them. I use them as much as I can. I'm not hodling them. I'm using them on posts. To have someone who's like an official vetted Whaleshare token holder chop the value of his token in half. And I'm just going to head something off at the pass. I don't want to, something like saying, oh, he did it because he didn't want Hagen to use them. It doesn't hold any water with me, because he could just keep the value of his token the way it was. And he could remove rewards from excessive abuse and refund the BTS. And I know they're supposed to be earned, not bought, but people are buying them on the open exchange, and there's nothing illegal about that.
I'm going to jump in really quick, Fuzzy, on this one, just to say that personally, I wish that he would have gave more warning that he was doing that. However, as a token holder, he can add, different stipulations, and I believe he probably just gave too many out. That's what happened to the fact that, why his are more per share than many of the other ones are, aside from Milk. Milk started giving out tokens a long time ago. So if they would have did 100 per reward, they would have been in a lot of trouble, right? So I'm thinking that that was his motivation, but in order to find out his motivation, you'd have to probably ask him personally.
Well, I only brought it up because Fuzzy said the word scammy, and that just resonated with me on that.
What words?
You said something about you don't want us to be perceived as scammy. Neither do I. That's why 99.9% of my time is put into Whaleshares.
Yeah, and one other cool thing that I'll say is that, and here's the one of the things that we always have people who I've given tokens to have done a great job, right? The vast majority of them do, quite literally. Like, very rarely do I ever have somebody who's really doing something absolutely horrible. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but those people kind of taught me one lesson. And one of the lessons that I came up with on this was I should be able to say, this person is, how do I say it? Is abusive to my tokens. I won't say what I want to say, but
I'm still hearing it.
This person is abusive to what I'm trying to give out to bring value to everybody. And I don't want this person to ever have the power to touch these tokens precisely because they have done such harm. Then I would like to blacklist them. But then the issue came, well, then what if they just make another account, right? So the answer, and this is actually Alex who brought it up to me a while back, and I never forgot it because I've been working in Bitshares for so long, but we never really talked about the whitelist because I've always wanted to just include everyone.
Thank you. That's where I was going.
But yeah, okay. But we basically now have talked about having it so if I follow you, you can use my tokens for X amount or X percentage of a reward. If I'm not following you, you might not even be able to use them, or you might only be able to use them for a 1% upvote, right? And these are things that I'm testing on another chain that is very friendly to Whaleshares because you guys know me. I like Voltron. I like Whaleshares. I like the fact that Whaleshares will be a place where everybody echoes other things from other chains onto the internet. It's kind of what I like, right? And this is, I think, going to be a really solid way to move forward with it. And I'm testing it right now on one of the tokens that I have, but I think that it's going to be a pretty solid way of doing it. And that connects back into the guilds because, right, like Bug, if you trust me and I become part of the whitelist on a platform where it's totally transparent to be able to see what people are rewarding, now you can go out and say, man, I need to find people who reward the same types of things as me. Put them in a guild. We all use the same token or the same tokens and are whitelisted for each other's tokens. And we have communities that will shout out elsewhere for us, right?
Yeah, I trust you, man. What opened my eyes about Whaleshares is when you gave me some of your token. What was it called again? Fuzzy Vest or something? I forget.
Oh, it was BeyondBit.
Yeah. And then Freedom held my hand and walked me through doing an upvote for myself on steemit, and the cataracts fell from my eyes. I went, oh, dude, right?
So
I
we
got,
cured cataracts? Is that what you're saying?
I can see. Hallelujah. So, I mean, hey, you gave me a big tip for singing a song for you one night. We were just hanging out after Whaleshares. I got to hand it to you. You know how to ride the lightning, man. If you ever want to basically run for office and take your state, I'll come be your campaign manager. But thank you for answering.
I would prefer to not be murdered.
I also do bodyguard work.
It's kind of funny how you see, it's my perfect world for me is, I grew up in a family that quite literally, they will give you more than they will take. And if everybody is willing to do that, then you can have a pretty amazing experience on this planet and not really ever need anything. Like, I don't recall our family ever really needing something that we couldn't band together to provide each other. And that's, I think, a wonderful model. I understand, I'm biased towards that. And I understand there's a bunch of people in the world who are not like that. So don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that this is rainbows and, harps all over the place and cotton candy with 0 calories and protein. But what I am talking about is we have the opportunity to do some pretty cool things. And I think far exceed in value what we can build and create from what destruction is being created by the few, the small minority of people who seem to be completely antithetical to existence on this planet.
Well, I'll bow out with this, and I'll just say the honest to God's truth. I made more on my first 2 posts on Whaleshares than 10 months busting my can on steemit. I'm still there. I have lots of friends there, but I'm basically like just laying down from steemit to Whaleshares and letting people walk over me. I'm onboarding people one at a time almost every day.
Well, and the thing is, early days, their activity and their working together, they're the riskiest days, right, of a chain when it first launches, because there's so much to learn. There's so many people. The entire community kind of has to learn itself and how it's going to do things. And those are the stages where it's cheaper generally too, right? And it's easier to earn tokens. So in these stages, it's going to be so much easier, and you can kind of consider this part of the distribution stage still, right? Because at some point, it's going to get to the point where the inflation is so low that people will be earning things, but there will be a lot of people who did. So if you want this to be the most robust chain possible, I would say let's try to get people on here from all kinds of different platforms using it, right? And let's try to create a culture where they feel like, oh, I could do this on Reddit, so I can do this here too. I can do this on Twitter, so I can do this here too. I can do this on, because if they keep saying that, eventually they're just going to say, well, by gosh, I might as well just post here and then post to all of those from here, right? Because it makes it on me. I don't have to post to all these different places, and I can get an entire community to share it here. What do I get on Twitter? Pay them a bunch of money for them to potentially post my an advertisement to me,
Well, you know what? I'm going to give you a slow-mo and a slow clap for that. That was good. Thank you very much.
Well, I hope that I answered some questions for all of you guys. And I know that it's a hard thing when you start out a community. And I'm just glad to see that people care and that you guys actually do care, because that's where we're at. Like, we have to have that core people. And I would urge you guys to continue working on posting and sharing each other's stuff. If you find people who are doing good things, don't be afraid, oh, this person didn't post a picture. Look at what they're writing, the things that they're doing. If they're rewarding things that you like, kind of think of it like if you were on Facebook, right? Because let's face it, I won't lie, Facebook, as much as I dislike them, in terms of what they're doing to censor people and shadow ban people. They did something really brilliant, which is they made sure that Facebook was a place where you voluntarily associated with people you wanted to see and talk with and associate with in whatever manner they felt and that you felt was proper interaction. If that was sending dirty pics to somebody then that's what it was. If it was telling everybody I ate a sandwich today, that's what it was. And people would like it and share it and reward it from your circle, from your friends, from your family. The moment that, the reason why they did that was because they wanted you to have all your friends and family connected to you on a network where they could easily see, but where you couldn't easily see, right? So if we do this right, we could potentially be the Trojan horse that takes down things like Facebook or makes them have to change. Because if you can actually form a family and a group that you can reward here and be part of it, instead of a subject of Mark Zuckerberg and his council, of head people over on Facebook, then you have something that is going to go mainstream. It's going to require the masses are going to want to join. And I think at this point in time, Facebook is kind of opening up opportunities, and the censorship from these centralized social media platforms is opening up a lot of opportunities for people who want to move, or who want to even create a potential competitor, right? So it provides a lot of opportunities, and they are. So they failed. We can learn from that. We can also learn from their other failures, is I guess my point. So thank you, Facebook. I don't hate you as much as I thought I did now, because I learned from your failures. So that's my take on it.
Somebody made a valid point up there. I think it was Marshall, that people need to use the whale tokens. That is important. Only X amount of whale tokens can be given out without risking crashing somebody's mana. And so the more that are actually in circulation, the less can be given out, if that makes any sense to anybody. So I understand that some people are probably holding them, trying to build up to 100%, but personally, I give out less when more are in circulation, because I want to keep a good value for the people that I am either paying to do certain jobs or supporting their contests. I want to be able to make sure that they get value out of the token when they go to use it.
What I think you're going to see, and this is something I've kind of learned crazy, is I have times when people won't use my tokens. And I think ironically, they want to use it when the price is really high of a token, right? And because of that, whenever they use it, they actually get less of the token in the rewards if they wait until that moment, because everybody else is doing that. Now, everybody's doing that when the dollar value of the token is high, right? But what a lot of people don't realize is whenever you do it when the dollar value of the token is lower, you're getting the same number of tokens. You're actually getting more tokens, right? But it doesn't seem like the same value, but it's always going to be the same value depending on when you choose to sell it, right? So couple that with the inflation in the network, and I would say that there's very little reason to hodl. Like, if you know what you're doing and you know how this works, there's very little reason to hold your tokens on Whaleshares. But I do understand where you're going with that, and I'll say this: I personally, I wouldn't worry about it too much. I'd keep it to this amount that you have, and if people choose to use it at the wrong times, that's their choice. I would definitely warn them, like you're trying to do right now. But if they don't want to listen, then it's not helping them. They're the ones there who are hurting themselves. And I know you like to protect and help people, so that's probably going to be one of the hardest things for you. is, is trying to tell them, no, please don't do this, and watching them do it anyway. I don't think it was hard.
Basically, what I ended up telling people is just people that I'm sponsoring weekly, if they're not using them and choosing to hold them, that I'm just not sending anymore until you use them. So that's kind of how I fix the sponsoring portion of it.
That's another good way of doing it too. You know, I have a couple situations with people where I say, I'm not going to be giving out any more tokens to you unless you use the ones that I've given. Continue using the number of tokens I give you per week, then that's fine. But I need to make sure that you're doing that. And, you know, that is a potential route. I still think that overall, because remember the mana refills, right? So if everybody is so silly that they do that, it will recover very quickly anyway. So I don't think that there will ever be like a time where you'll have to worry about it being down forever or for a long period of time. But there might be periods of time when people do it the wrong way. And there's going to be a lot of learning to do on that front. It's a very good point and something that we have to consider. It's human behavior, right? Unpredictable. Predictably irrational, I believe is the word.
Yep, it's all about a learning process, that's for certain. Anybody else have any questions?
Well, if nobody has any questions or comments, I would like to say thank you to all of you. And thank you for asking questions, and thank you for thinking of the hard questions that you can ask, because those are things that I think, you know, we do need to talk about a lot of this stuff, and we need to at least understand what we, you know, there's a saying, you don't know what you stand for, you'll fall for anything type of thing, right? So my take on it is, you know, if I can stand for anything right now, it'll be because I'm looking at the world I live in, and I don't want to live in a world of censorship. I know what has happened in the past when books have been burned to protect people, and it never worked out well. Now they don't have to have evidence, right? Now the evidence isn't necessarily as easy to find when they do it to you on other social media platforms. There's not a blacklist option. Well, there probably is a blacklist option. I mean, I doubt that it's on Bitshares, so I don't see why there wouldn't be one that we could use. But it isn't employed by me. Maybe somebody else would choose to use it.
Dude can block them in his script as well. So yes and no.
Yeah, and I'll urge you guys to, you know, keep on going out there, helping out the people who like PowerPics and KrazyKrista. If you guys know somebody who can help them or work with them, you know, or if you feel like you can help them in certain ways, let them know, because they have been people I've trusted from the very beginning with this. They've never proven me they don't have the best intentions. We don't always agree 100% on everything. That's to be expected, but I will always respect them as people and as people who do care and have similar vision. But I do, you know, I want to say that they do a lot of work for you.
I have a question for you, Fuzzy.
Don't get the credit that I think they deserve. And, you know, there's a reason why I can be with my wife and son today, right? It was because of them being there doing the things they're doing. So I just want to thank all of you guys, and I want to thank PowerPics and Krazy, but I want to say any of you guys who are helping them or want to help them, thank you for those who are. And those who aren't, consider if you have some extra time, because helping those who help us only lifts all of us. It only lifts all boats. And when we lift all boats, we're all better off, right? And nobody has to lose. Nobody has to fail in this. But thanks for being part of it.
Mandel Sage has a question for you, so I'm going to let him pipe in really quick.
Thanks, Krista. Thank you, Fuzzy. I've really enjoyed tonight. I just wanted to ask. I mean, I'm getting in trouble with my wife all the time for spending too much time here, and you mentioned your wife earlier. What do you do to with that situation?
What do I do with the situation? To be honest with you, my wife is right here, so I'm going to answer it honestly, but nobody will believe it's honestly. um, quite literally, she has been there. She used to make jokes about my Bitshares girlfriend, and there were times when a lot of people in cryptocurrency don't understand, like outside of cryptocurrency, they look at cryptocurrency and they're like, why is this valuable? You know what I mean? And I think that she went through a big stage of that. And I think the best thing that could happen was just me persisting, continuing to do things that would help us in our lives. Like I worked a full-time job too. But in addition to it, um, I really, I go ahead. Come here, baby. Love you unconditionally. She says to love me unconditionally. I think that's part of it, and she's right. But I also think that it didn't hurt that tried. I try to do things like not spend all day on the computer. That I try to spend some time with her and my son too. And ultimately, she knows that I'm doing this for them. That was the biggest one, I think, to be honest with you. Sorry for such a long answer, but I would say the biggest answer is I would sit down and I'd talk to her and I'd say, look at what we have a 4-year-old. Every day when I watch the news or when I look at anything that has to do with politics and the state of the world, the people who've been in power want to disempower us, make us slaves, and want to make us feel like we're so that we're a leech on society and that we should all vote to what? Exterminate a bunch of us? I think that's the answer to them. And it's a big deal that we have the potential opportunity to make our son's life better and her life better with this technology. So I think that's probably the biggest one. And yes, she does unconditionally love me until I get in trouble. But at the same time, she also recognizes the point and why I'm doing what I'm doing. And it wasn't for the money from the very beginning. Never has. You can ask her. She'll tell you. It's been because I look at my son and I realize I don't want him to ever have to worry about, because he's a Christian person, because he loves God, having to be censored, put in a gulag somewhere, maybe worse, murdered in the street like like a lot of Christians all over the world are. And it goes for anything else, right? So that's why I think ultimately. Because when you look at, I mean, what do our kids have when we're gone, right? They've got what we've built. Damn.
Well,
pretty hardcore, buddy. Sorry for
no, thank you. That was quite literally inspiring. Inspiring answer to my silly question. Well, and not so silly as well. I guess it is important. My wife, I said in the chat that she doesn't get it, but it's not quite true. I don't give her enough credit. And yeah, but yeah, as you say, just don't spend all day on the computer.
it's
And you have a
dangerous,
son.
man.
Sorry, I was going to say you have a son. That's pretty crazy. Like, hats off to you, because my wife and I have decided not to have children, and I couldn't imagine dedicating like time to these kinds of projects, which take a lot of time, and having children too. It just seems insane to me.
It would be insane if I didn't have amazing people helping me like Krazy and PowerPics, but they've got kids too, right? But the thing, you seeing a pattern there? Maybe all of us care about what happens with our kids' lives afterwards a lot, right? And I think, man, to me, didn't expect to have our son. But, so whenever we found out she was pregnant, I got that kind of like fear, like as a dad, am I going to be able to take care of him? Am I going to, but then you realize, man, it's just like when I watch him doing little things and I watch him living his life with that innocence that you only get once,
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
yeah, that's what this is for. I never would have realized how much amazing this is, but best friend in my world, man, and he's a cuddler, which doesn't hurt.
Well, I want to say thank you to Miss Fuzzy and Little Fuzzy for sharing us or sharing you with us, because your guidance, your vision is what kind of made this all possible. There's many people behind the scenes that don't step out a lot and take credit for where their credit is due. Um, a lot of people just see me, just see PowerPics, just see, Bushkill hanging around, and don't realize, that we have a bit of a bigger team. It's still a small team as far as teams go, but there's lots of people that don't come out and take credit for it. Babita and Rico, Vit, all of them, all important, very important.
Yep, very important. And the cool thing is, they all have ideas about the same things, right? The culture of Whaleshares started with BeyondBits and Whaleshare tokens, and our community made it possible to build a new chain from that. So I think that that's a great culture to keep for us to focus on that. And at the very beginning, it's been to create a chain that didn't want to monopolize everything onto it, but wanted to create synergy and empower other chains to exist as well, but just use it for its own use case, which is to share things everywhere. And if we do that, man, I think Whaleshares has a beautiful future. And the tokens that I'll be getting over time here will be worth a lot more than I buy them for. So that's my answer, man. I really appreciate that you guys make it possible. And thank you, Krazy. Thank you very much. I know you guys are busy, and I hope to God that this is helping you guys and the community is helping you in return. That's all I will. If I ever see that, and when I see that, that'll be, to me, that's the epitome of it. Everybody trying to work together to bring that value, to bring that simple use case that's so powerful, but was never explored because everybody was too busy calling other people circle jerkers and censoring while they were behind the scenes rewarding themselves and each other. Right. And that's kind of what it became. And we have a chance to do a little bit different.
Yeah, I mean, I've been lucky to be blessed by this community. My job is great mostly. There are some times when I have to play the mean Krista, which I don't enjoy doing very much, sort of like adulthood. So, sort of like with my own family. I don't always like to ground people and shout, but sometimes I have to, right? Because the community is only getting bigger. So look forward, guys, everybody listening, to seeing a couple more mods join our team pretty soon as the community gets bigger. I'd like to be able to not have to be here all the time. No offense to you guys, but I'm working probably 60 hours a week right now, and that's way more than I pay myself for working. So look forward and and if you have any suggestions of somebody who you think might make a good mod, feel free to DM them to me or tag them here if you want to show it. But thank all of you guys for being here. Me and PowerPics open ourselves up every week to do this. We were lucky to be joined by Fuzzy this week. Hopefully we can get him on every other month or once a month, maybe, if we're lucky. And if not, we're always here to open up to questions. Communication is key. And, eventually this will be more in the community's hands in the direction you want it to go. So it's important to get together and have these talks.
Yeah, and I'll gladly join up. I'll try to sneak on, like I said, occasionally. I'll talk to my wife probably, to be honest with you, and let her know. But um, I'm very much happy. I'm very happy to see that you guys all join up, whether I'm here or not. That's what makes me happy. Like I know a lot of people kind of think, might think that's a little bit weird, but I'm from a world where everybody has guilds and people would create guilds, and some guilds would be huge, some guilds would be little, but they'd all sustain each other themselves in the game in their own way, because it was a community who would grow around a concept and build together, and that's what I like. So whenever we see crypto going in that direction, I think that's the demographic that's really going to take it to the masses and take it to the moon, so to speak, because they're the ones who've been working with cryptocurrency, early forms of cryptocurrency via video games and new economies, all the time. Those are the people who grew up doing it. So once we have those people on board, I think everything else becomes a heck of a lot bigger. Bite your tongue. Oh.
So I don't know if you want to keep recording PowerPics, that's fine. I actually have to step out. So if you want to do a sign off and then after party it up, you can. But that's up to you.
Yeah, definitely. We can wrap up the actual official Hangout, and then we'll go into an after party. So thanks everyone for joining us. This was the Whaleshares Hangout number 9, October 30th, 2018. Be sure to join us each week in the official Whaleshares Discord, same time, 7 p.m. Eastern, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Later, guys.